Welcome to the 9th edition of On the Warrant, our annual review of all things town meeting. And my name is Mark DiSalvo. I'm the elected town moderator here in North Andover. I'm joined by our sterling cast of characters, the chair of our finance committee, Tim Tschirhart, our chair of the board of selectmen, Regina Kean, our acting town manager, but only acting in a sterling fashion as well, Lynn Savage. To my left is Holly Vietzke Lynch, who is the chair of our school committee, and our superintendent of schools, Dr. Greg Gilligan. During this conversation that we're going to have, we're hoping to prepare you for our town meeting, which will be taking place on Tuesday, the 14th of May at the North Andover High School. At that meeting, we will be establishing the rules, regulations, bylaws, most importantly, the budget of our community. And in that community and in that meeting, we're a very deliberative body. This is actually the legislative process of our open form of town meeting government, and all citizens are welcome, and all registered voters are particularly welcome to come and express the power that they have as legislators in effect in that room. Among the most important things that we do is the characterization of our budget as a policy document, because it informs those services and other things that we're going to be providing. We have in excess of $100 million of spend in our community this year. I introduced Lynn Savage as our acting town manager, but for many, many years, you've been deep in the numbers. So this is an easy call for you, Lynn. Yep. Why don't you share with us what the highlights are of the municipal side of our town budget?
Okay. So it's a $103 million budget that's being presented.
That's almost real money.
It is, absolutely. So we start the budget process, of course, as we do every year in September. Typically, we have a strategic planning with the Board of Selectmen. Unfortunately, this year with the September 13th gas disaster, that got put off because of the fact that it was the following Monday, and as we all know, it was crazy. So myself and the town manager, Andrew Mailer, proceeded with putting together the budget, starting with the capital improvement plan. Then we moved on to the operating budget with the help of the Revenue Fixed Cost Committee, who meets in between.
Now, who are the Revenue Fixed Cost Committee?
The Revenue Fixed Cost Committee is a group of individuals. There's two people from the Finance Committee. There's the school department, which is the superintendent, and the Jim Mealy, the business manager, myself. We all meet, review the revenues, make projections, and recommendations to the town manager. So you're suggesting it's a very considered process and a process that has been inculcated for years. Yes. What's come out of it? What are the initiatives in the budget this year? The initiatives in the budget are a modest increase. We have about a 4.3% increase in revenue. Many other communities would tell you that's an enormously healthy increase. True. But we've had some good increases in motor vehicle excise, which is a good indication that the economy is doing well. I mean, we have increased that revenue source by up to $4.6 million, which is an increase over last year of about $400,000. So, and we have the state aid is basically level to FY19, because we of course do not have any of the final recommendations from the state. The property taxes is, again, a modest increase, which overall gives us a 4.3. So having said that, we of course don't raise the operating budget for the full 4.3%, because we don't want to use up every cent that we have, just in case something occurs. So we have about a little over 3.75 to 4% increase in the expenditure budget. And that's made up of 3.7 to the school department, a 3% to the municipal side, and then a modest increase to the fixed costs. So we'll get to the school department in a moment. Regina, why don't you share with us what you believe the principal initiatives are out of the town budget from the municipal side of it?
So Lynn had mentioned that because of the gas disaster, there was some delay in us having our strategic planning meeting. We obviously still did provide input as to what we think are the strategic priorities, and a few of the items, while small, I think are interesting to point out, and I'm just happy to see them there because they were included and referenced throughout the master plan that was created. So obviously last year we had a very robust effort with significant community involvement in updating our master plan for the town, and that's really guiding the decisions for how we invest in the future and develop the town. So one of the things that's in the budget is an increase. I think historically we had something like $50,000 or $75,000 annually. Now we have $250,000 in for sidewalks, sidewalk improvement and expansion, and that's not a huge figure if you look at a $100 million budget, but that's something that residents were very clear that they wanted: increased pedestrian access to businesses, to places of recreation, to schools, obviously. And
so during the listening process of the master plan development,
yeah,
that was one of the community concerns that
exactly
came out,
right,
and you chose to address it.
Right. So that was an item in the strategic planning for the Board of Selectmen. Also, you know, just shade tree replacement is another small item, but significant to people. They want to, you know, have North Andover continue to be very, you know, a natural bucolic place, and the replacement of shade trees is an important item. So it might be a small budget item, but I was excited to see it in there as part of our strategic planning. Obviously, larger scale items. One thing that I just like to point out, because I don't think people necessarily realize it, but in the capital improvement plan, the process that the town goes through and the staff go through to make the requests for capital improvement items, to me is so thorough and impressive, in that we wait, you know, every department puts their requests in. There's a weighting for the importance of the item to public safety, financial impact, you know, impact to lives. There's a set of criteria. I encourage anyone who's interested to look at the budget, the capital improvement plan document, to understand how those things are decided upon and presented to us, because it's very thorough and way more of an involved process than I guess I realized before I was on the selectmen. So I just like to point it out for people because I think it's very interesting. And I'm really excited about the capital improvement plan that we have in our budget.
Greatly, I appreciate it. So on the school side, which is a significant portion of our budget, and perhaps, Greg, you can suggest to us exactly what those metrics are.
So for the North Andover Public Schools, we were really looking to focus on achieving the goals that are set within our strategic plan, which we've had for several years now. And that focuses on consistent and rigorous curriculum for all students. All students, meaning how do we educate all students in North Andover, whether they're English language learners, special education, how do we meet the needs of everyone? And last but not least, professional practice. I had the good fortune of being the new superintendent this year, of conducting an entry survey and meetings where I had the opportunity to see 1,136 people, over 600 by survey and the rest in person. Somewhat similar to that listening tour for the Townside strategic plan. And what really came out is one of the things we've been focusing on, and that's decreasing class size, which we've made significant progress, particularly at the elementary schools. So this year's budget for FY20 for the schools continues to focus on decreasing class size, as well as meeting the needs of not only students who may be English language learners. Interesting to note, last year's graduating class had over 25 students graduate that were born in 25 different countries. We have over 34 different languages spoken in the North Andover Public Schools. And so one of the areas in the budget that we're looking at this year is increasing support for English language learner support in teaching, as well as elementary positions to continue to lower class size, reading for targeted intervention at the elementary schools. We've looked to add a nurse at North Andover High School to meet the needs of almost 1,500 students, as well as adding a... You said a nurse. Obviously, there's an existing nursing staff in the high school as well. Yeah, so to that point, as we've been fortunate to have a grant for many years. The grant ran out last year, so that provided us an extra nurse, or a second nurse at the high school. And just with that population, with emergencies or anything else, we needed to add a nurse to the budget. But even more importantly, I'm really proud of the fact that our kids are performing well at the high school. And with kids working hard and performing well, we've had more students interested in taking advanced placement courses. And we've had some scheduling conflicts, because it's hard to pick a schedule as a student because you have to make choices. But at the same time, we're adding a math and science teacher 1.0 to meet those needs, particularly around AP chemistry, some of the other AP courses, and potentially as well as college preparatory courses in the mathematics.
So there are high expectations in our schools. As a school committee member, what were your priorities, and how did the school committee approach the process of developing the budget as a policy document?
So one of the priorities that we had was actually the AP. We have heard from parents that were frustrated that their kids were not able to take AP classes, either due to class limits or, as Dr. Gilligan mentioned, conflicts. So that was important to the school committee, and we worked closely with Dr. Gilligan and Mr. Mealy to make that happen. The class size is still, it's getting much better, especially at the elementary, as he said, but it's still an issue at the middle school and the high school as these elementary school students are moving up who were not beneficiaries of the reduced class sizes. So that's definitely on our radar, and wasn't something we can tackle this year, but we are starting to think strategically about how to do that in the very near future. We've applied for the MSBA again for the 3rd time.
Now, what does that mean specifically?
Massachusetts School Building
Authority.
Okay. So that's a process where once you get in the queue, it can take 6 to 7 years. Getting in the queue means a proof that the state recognizes that your school is one in need of repair or renovation.
Or in this case, expansion as well.
Expansion, right.
At the middle school.
We have gotten very positive feedback from the state, but our needs haven't been great enough as compared to other communities who have applied. So we're hopeful maybe 3rd time's the charm, but we also need to start thinking about putting plans in place if we get rejected again.
So is there a process relative to that ongoing right now?
Certainly. So we've recently just submitted another application to the MSBA, or the Massachusetts School Building Authority. And one of the main reasons is this. We have one of the largest middle schools in the Commonwealth with 1,200 students. There's just physically no more space to add positions or rooms there. In our comparable districts, it's the top in terms of class size at 24 and a half students. So we've had the application in, and I think, as I've mentioned in a few other newsletters and different pieces, as a community, we're going to have to look at, what are some other ways we may have to tackle this problem? How do we examine, besides just MSBA, how we go about it?
Appreciate that. So we have this considered processes over many, many months, and with full of wish lists, and the policymakers make the decisions as to what ought to happen. And then it gets turned over to this rare group called the Finance Committee. Tim, why don't you tell us what the responsibilities of the Finance Committee are and how you approached the request from the business leaders in our community?
Sure, no problem. First of all, we are representatives of the community. We're citizens just like everybody else. We're not elected. We are appointed, but we're relatively independent. Our job is to basically kick the tires of the budget to make sure that it's sound, fiscally sound, and is supported by the numbers. I personally took place in the Fixed Cost Revenue Committee, and I can say that from that perspective, which is really the starting point for the operating budget, the numbers are conservative, but they're proper, and they will not overreach us or extend us, so that's a positive thing. Secondly, all the operating expenses fit within that revenue stream, nothing extreme. I think one of the big things that the Finance Committee does that budget make sense, but also how are they applying the budget to the strategic goals that started years ago and going forward?
So it's not a picture of the moment in terms of a recommendation to town meeting, but it takes into consideration future interests.
Correct, correct. One example is in the schools, we've had a strategic plan to reduce class size. So this year we're having an additional 5.7, Greg, correct me, additional heads in the school system. We also have 2 more coming within the municipal budget, 1 needed for fire training. And the other one, which is an interesting one, is for the DPW project manager, which is a full-time exercise, especially as we go into the facilities capital plan. These are actions against a strategic plan that someone years ago set out. In addition to, there are things we concern ourselves with, and that's the reserves. And the reserves this year are properly being handled. They're being brought up to speed. Reserves help us fiscally from a perspective of keeping our AAA bond rating. So it's a good thing. The other thing which I'm proud to say is the selectmen appointed a committee on the other pension employment benefits, and that's a huge liability that this town and all the towns in the state have. And our committee is actually still in draft, but coming up with some very sound proposals to help address that exposure that the town has. And I'm proud to be part of that committee. There are many things that have gone on. One of the things, if I have another 30 seconds, please.
You might guess.
First of all, we look for
We're only talking about $103 million, so 30 seconds works.
One of the things that happens that we try to do is how good is this town managed? And the fact that Lynn and her team received the Distinguished Budget Presentation Award year after year, and I forget how many years in a row, tells me about the strength of our budget process. Secondly, we met with everybody in this room, and there's a lot of transparency. We asked tough questions, and there was no holding back. There wasn't nothing was hidden. So I feel very comfortable about the fact that we've done our due diligence relative to the budget process.
So let's talk about reserves. One of the things that I get from citizens sometimes is not understanding what the reserve process is like, what various buckets might they be in, what are they held for, and questioning sometimes why aren't they expended in the moment for what some people might consider critical needs.
Sure. The reserve policy, first of all, shows that you've got some fiscal responsibility in your town, not for today, but for the future. I don't want to be a doom and gloom person, but I know there will be a recession one day. And we will have tight times relative to maintaining existing services. These reserves go a long way to handling that particular thing in our stabilization fund in particular. I mentioned the other pension employment benefits, OPEB. That reserve is creeping up and it's going well. And again, we've got a large liability that we're tackling through that reserve. Another one important to us, which is hard to manage, is the special education reserve. Not the reserve itself. Special education cost fluctuates so wildly that it was deemed a few years ago that we needed a special reserve to offset those unknown things that happen weeks after town meeting has approved a budget, and you need to be able to go back to get some additional money. Otherwise, you'll be laying off teachers to pay for that special education cost. So a great reserve, and that's, again, part of the whole budget process.
So I'm very proud to be the official responsible for appointing the members of the Finance Committee who are disparate in terms of viewpoint, ideology, geography, age, race, gender, across the board. Do you feel that that committee does reflect what the interests of the community are? Because after all, you actually have no authority whatsoever. The responsibility of the Finance Committee, it's quite true.
Sorry.
It's true.
The responsibility of the Finance Committee is to make a recommendation to those people who have the power
Correct.
to vote in the room.
Correct. Our opinion means, even though we don't have the power, and we're not going to question policy, we want to make sure that policy is there. If there's something amiss, we will say something, and that it is up to the town meeting to basically, do they agree or disagree with us? We've been successful in the last handful of years, several years, of having a consensus budget, and I feel very comfortable about that. The other thing I really want people to know is we do have a disparate group of people, some representing the schools in the fact of the parents of school children or school children to be. There's people like me who represent the senior citizens, perhaps. And just good business sense as well. And we're independent, and we don't lean one way or the other. I like the fact that we work together very well for the best of the town and the town citizens. So,
Appreciate that. So let's morph to one part of our 117-page, I think, warrant that we have this year. It sounds quite daunting, and it's actually reasonably interesting reading. But one large part of it are zoning articles. What are the zoning articles that are represented, and which of them do you think are particularly important, Lynn?
Out of the zoning articles, I think the most important one is the one on 1600 Osgood, which is the 40R repeal.
So we just heard an announcement that that a developing company out of Dallas is going to be purchasing a large part of the project, or that plan, rather, that plot plan.
Yes.
And that a large fulfillment entity will be slated to work in that space. Will that be at this town meeting?
No, it will not, just the repeal of the 40R will be there, but the actual.
So a 40R is
a zoning overview of that property that about 10 years ago was voted on at town meeting, because there was a project proposed there for over 500 or so housing units.
Yes.
So nothing has happened on that for the last 10 years.
So that's going to be withdrawn. That's one of the articles. Okay.
Exactly. So the project that is now in front of us, that was announced last night, will require a special town meeting beyond this May town meeting.
All right. So at a future time, when we'll address that all, at another time, there will be a special town meeting to talk about the changes and the land use at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. But a setup for that is actually going to be happening at this town meeting.
Yes.
So there's a real interconnection in terms of everything that
Right.
we do. And I can see that the Finance Committee is over there licking their chops about potential new revenue
Yes.
and the like. But we'll address the merits of that issue at a later time. Are there any other zoning issues that we ought to be concerned about, or our fellow citizens ought to be prepared to address?
The other zoning is the Stevens Estate
So
property.
let's talk about the Stevens Estate. It's had a little bit of heat. Regina, why don't you bring us up to speed?
Yeah, I would love to. So the Stevens Estate, as people may know, was acquired by the town a number of years ago. I don't know the exact number.
Yeah, quite a few years.
And we've been running the Stevens Estate as a function facility, having events and weddings and so forth there. I think for several years, ever since I've been on the Board of Selectmen, there's been a concern about the fact that it will require capital investments over time to maintain the building. Obviously, it's an old building. The ancillary buildings, the guardhouse and the carriage house, are not in use, so they're going to continue to decline, and the building's going to need repairs. While it's had some modest revenues, the building itself has generated modest revenues over the last 6 to 7 years, or it's been at flat or modest revenues. This year, there's a projected deficit, and that's projected to also be the case in 2020. And we believe that a municipality is not the right entity to be managing an event function hall, I guess, at the end of the day. The Board of Selectmen, and I know many people in town, cherish the building, want to continue having this historic property, maintained in North Andover. We just don't think that the town is the right entity to manage it as a function facility.
So will the use of the building and the utilization of that property be addressed at this town meeting?
Yes, so there's 2 articles on the warrant related to the Stevens Estate. One is to break the lot into 2 lots, one being the land surrounding the buildings. So it's approximately 137 acres of land adjacent to the water, to the lake. And there's a conservation restriction. One of the articles is a conservation restriction on that land. So that land will never be developed, never be, nothing will happen to that land. It will be preserved as natural open space. Which
no
I think
no condos
no
on that
condos
land
on
with
that
a nice
land.
view of the
beautiful
Lake
land
Chippewa.
that still will maintain, our beautiful natural setting that we have there. That's one of the articles. The second article is related to the 3 buildings and the land on which they sit, which is approximately 15 acres, slightly more than 15 acres.
And what are those 3 buildings, to give people
So
the opportunity? Most are just aware
Right.
of the gorgeous home.
Yes, so that's the estate, the home, the gatehouse at the entrance that you pass when you drive in, and the carriage house behind, which is in a state of it's closed and in a state of disrepair.
Right.
So the other warrant article will give us the opportunity to, and by the way, there's a historic preservation on the home. I just want to note that. So the other warrant article will give us the opportunity to sell or lease those parcels, those 3 buildings, to an entity that would be in a better position to run and manage the facility as an event function hall or something similar.
Or any other
Or
use
any other
that-
boutique hotel or something of that nature. There's an RFP actually that's been issued by the Board of Selectmen, and responses are due May 1st. So for us to act on one of those responses, if we were to get a interested party, and we have had some interest from private entities that do take historic homes. For example, I've seen a JP Morgan estate. One of the interested parties I know has taken JP Morgan estate, invested in the renovation and the upkeep of that estate, and rents it out and manages it as a wedding venue. So some beautiful work by the example interested parties, and for us to be able to capitalize on that and let a entity that does this as its core competence and can really preserve the building, make improvements to the building in terms of its upkeep, further expand the use because the carriage house is not used right now. This would be a great opportunity for us, for the town, for the people who cherish the building as a historic site. I think it will be better preserved in this case. One thing I'll note so the warrant article, as written in the document that people may have seen already, talks about giving the ability to the Board of Selectmen to sell or lease the estate. There's been a lot of discussion in the community and on social media and other sources of people's concern about the fact that, for what use might we sell it? While we thought it was clear in the RFP and other sources, we wanted to make it very clear to everyone that our interest is still to maintain the historic preservation of the home. It's really just about who is the right entity to run it and manage it and take care of it for the long term. So we voted last night in our selectmen meeting on revised language to the warrant article that we will be presenting for the motion, because obviously the warrant's closed and so it won't be changed until the town meeting, but that specifically states the ability to sell or lease the property conditioned upon historic preservation of the building, and continued public access to the parking lot and the trails. That's another concern that people have had. There's obviously beautiful trails.
So there's a bit of a theme that I'm hearing in terms of listening throughout all of our conversation, that the policymakers and executive leadership of the town are trying to listen rather hard to what people's interests are, and craft what they think is responsible public policy, and hope that that's affirmed at town meeting.
Exactly.
Any comments about the Stevens estate that you'd like to make as a municipal leader?
Yeah, I mean, I really think what the board is planning, and with this RFP, which we hope comes and brings a great response.
But we don't know at this moment.
We don't know at this moment. We won't know till May 1st,
Okay.
which after May
And
1st, we can make,
thereafter.
thereafter we can make a lot of other decisions. But I think it would be a good thing for the estate. Unfortunately, the town financially could not preserve that building in the way it needs to be preserved.
Has the FinCom weighed in on this?
We have. I mean, we're not in a business of hospitality, and there is a lot of cost. Right now in the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan, there's a token amount from in there to improve the bathroom facilities of that estate. There was plans to do much more, but the money isn't there. And as an enterprise fund, it has to pay for itself. And right now, it just can't pay for itself relative to its own improvements. So yeah, we feel we're in favor of this article.
And the funds that are utilized for that estate right now that in deficit are not available to go to school services or
Correct.
any other municipal service, or even reserves if you wish. That part of the rationale
Yeah.
that will be expressed to town meeting?
Correct.
Okay.
Regina, what restrictions are imposed by the historic preservation? What could a company not come in and do?
They can't take apart the historic, I can't actually answer in specific detail without looking into the specifics of the restriction, but they can't take out they can't tear down the building, they can't take out historic features of the building, and so on.
So
I don't know.
and knock down walls.
The
Right.
historic integrity of the
Right.
building needs to be saved. They can't destroy that.
At 134 years old.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Greg and I were the only people in town at the time that, meaning on this panel, not just the two of us, but the only folks in town, at the time that came up. And the issue was to make sure that there was not development around the lake.
Right.
And so there was a principal interest, and that principal interest has, I think, clearly been preserved and succeeded by the community. But that the stewardship question was maybe less well addressed and needed some time in order to stew, if you will, until we understood what was happening.
Right.
Yep.
And I know that this has percolated for some number of years, but you chose this time to bring it up, and hope that town meeting makes whatever judgment it will, and when it does, then we'll abide by that and move forward.
Right.
So there's a couple of other articles on the warrant that have interested me. One of them is, there are two citizens petitions, or several, but two of particular interest. Number one, about an extension of a liquor license to a business on Waverly Road in North Andover. The second of which is more policy oriented, and that affects at least some of the people on this panel itself, as a matter of fact. That was a citizen's petition about who is eligible to run for municipal office. Might you be able to help us on that,
Yeah.
Regina?
So the latter petition that you mentioned basically says that a person who is collecting a paycheck from the town of North Andover cannot serve on an elected board. I think seeing what's happened in neighboring communities with just a conflict of interest of if you are voting on a budget that impacts your salary, clearly that's an issue. And so, I mean, I'm fully supportive of that, and I know the Board of Selectmen unanimously supported that.
So I want to understand that. So it would affect the ability for essentially a municipal employee to run for school committee or Board of Selectmen, or even moderator, as the case might be. I believe, isn't this the case, that teachers already inside of a school system are not allowed to run for school committee?
That's a very good question. I mean, typically, if anyone who receives a paycheck from the town wants to...
I can tell you that that's absolutely state law.
Yeah, so if you want to participate in anything, even a non-paid position, like be appointed by the selectmen to the board at the library, or the many vacancies that they have that they fill with good people, typically those folks have to call the Ethics Commission to get approval and put it on file with Joyce Bradshaw, the town clerk.
Yeah. So you said that I may have stepped on you, and I apologize, that the Board of Selectmen has endorsed this?
Yes.
Was that a unanimous vote
That
by
was
any
a
chance?
unanimous
It
vote.
was. Does the school committee intend to take a position on that issue?
On this
On the
particular,
citizen petition issue?
we haven't discussed that.
Okay.
So I think that wasn't presented to us to vote on to take a position on that, so I think we're precluded from it at this point.
You're obviously, anybody is welcome to take a position, as the case may be,
Oh, it's-
but notwithstanding that. And I suspect that the FinCom...
It was the same thing as the school committee. We can't take a position on it because it wasn't there. So.
As the moderator, I will not express an opinion.
Okay.
So just to make that very, very clear. So we do have an interesting wrinkle this year. We're going to be having a special town meeting immediately upon the conclusion of our regular town meeting. In past years, we've addressed in special town meeting sort of a play within a play, some non-controversial items that just needed to be cleaned up. But it appears that we have a couple of things that are actually really important to address at this special town meeting immediately after our existing town meeting to take place on the same evening at the high school, commencing at 7 p.m. On May 14th. And you brought it up in your very first conversation, Lynn, and that really had to do with the Columbia gas crisis and the explosions and other detrimental effects on September 13th.
Yes.
Why are we having this special town meeting, and what about that is being addressed?
Okay. So there's 4 articles on the special town meeting. 2 of them are basically housekeeping, which are standard that we have every year, which is for the special ed stabilization. The other 3 and 4 are for articles to allow the town to use the funding from the Columbia gas settlement once that is resolved. so that we don't have to go back and create another special town meeting somewhere down the line.
To do what with those funds?
To do the restoration of the road work, replace the roads that were torn up from curb to curb, sidewalks. And then the second one would be to restore and fix the Grogan's Field, which is where all the trailers were stored that the people were using during the gas disaster. Because if you've been by that field, as you know, it's not usable right now. We are, in order to use that funding, we have to create these capital accounts so that when we get the settlement, at the point of getting that settlement, whether it's today, tomorrow, or 2 months from now, if it's past the July, the town meeting, and we haven't created the accounts, we have no ability to use those funds and would have to go to another town meeting.
So let me editorialize for a moment. I think wholly appropriately. We saw a community response that I thought was extraordinary in the wake of that September 13th experience. Yes. From the schools opening up, the gymnasium that I spent a couple of days in helping folks out, to the municipal leaders, Andrew Mailer most particularly,
yes,
your
absolutely.
predecessor, the Board of Selectmen and the school committee, and across the board providing forward-looking appreciation and immediate services to people that were in critical need. Yep. And we saw the streets being torn up and the houses being burned down, as the case may be, some of them, including my own nephews, as a matter of fact, being rebuilt at this moment in time. So there is a restoration. But some folks in the community might think, well, why doesn't Columbia just fix the roads?
Right. We have addressed that, and I think the best route is for us to contract the individuals, and I mean, it's going to take several years. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be probably a 3 to 4, maybe 5-year process. As you see the roads, we're going to fix them curb to curb.
So in the normal process, the town would fix the roads anyway.
Yes.
So there are negotiations ongoing right now in order to settle with a pot of money in order to do this mitigation.
Correct.
You want to give us a little scoop? Is there any
Can't
information that you can provide us right now? Are we talking, $50,000 or $5 million?
When we get it, everyone will know.
Fair enough. I tried, folks. I'm sorry. I just let you know. We're getting near the end of our play here. Does anybody have any other commentary they'd like to make about the items that we've discussed thus far?
I'd just like to say that I really appreciate working with Acting Town Manager Lynn Savage and everyone else in the community, and particularly long gone, the Independent Comptroller Andrew Mailer. Yes. Met with us weekly and was deeply involved in assisting the school department in creating this budget for FY20. And through that collaboration and through the creativity of creating a special education stabilization fund, using the Medicaid funds to support curriculum in perpetuity, have really made the difference. And that's what sets North Andover apart from many other municipalities that do not have that type of creative funding to help the schools.
Well, I think you're quite right about the relative collaboration in my long experience in the community, which might be an opportunity for us to go off script a little bit. And let me ask about, we don't want to lose Lynn, but she reserves or will revert to her prior job as town accountant extraordinaire. What is the process of hiring a new town manager, and when do you anticipate that it will be completed?
Great question. It is in flight, not going fast enough. I mean, we've hired an executive search firm, MRI, Municipal Resources, to support the process. So they're helping us as we go through the hiring process. We're accepting resumes now. The deadline, I believe, is April 29th for the applications, and we have appointed a search committee, 5-person search committee. Each selectman appointed a person to that committee who will be working with MRI to assess, evaluate the applications. Ms. Lynch is actually on that committee. To evaluate the applications and whittle them down, so to speak, and do the first round of interviews and present us a set of finalists to interview. We are currently scheduled to interview finalists June 24th and hope to make a decision immediately thereafter. And hopefully that person will not have a long notice period that they have to give their current employer. So we're looking at summer for a new
I would
town manager.
anticipate that we're a pretty attractive community, that we'll have some well qualified folks for that
Yes,
role.
I would anticipate that as well.
So the plane will land
Easy
sometime
so.
the end of June and maybe disembark, and we'll actually
Right.
see a new town manager perhaps by the end of the summer at the latest, we hope.
Yes, that's the hope.
Well, I
Yes.
appreciate that. Tim, you wanted to comment on something?
I have nothing to comment relative to what we've talked about, but Mark, I am curious about what's going to be new at this town meeting.
Why do you think there'll be something new?
There- You always present something new, Mark. You always have something new.
I guess I'm tabbed.
Yep.
Well, I'm very proud that as a town meeting, North Andover has allowed itself to be a laboratory for the future, and we brought some reasonably significant innovation that many other communities in the Commonwealth and frankly throughout town meeting land in New England and other states, things like our initiative on remote questions, allowing questions to be texted and or emailed into the town meeting. Because we all know while all the power happens to be in the room, not all knowledge happens to be in the room. I was fortunate enough, or maybe ignorant enough, to be tabbed as the co-chair of what's called the 2040 Committee by the Massachusetts Moderators Association. And we're looking at what will town meeting look like in the year 2040. It's clear to me that by that time, we may very likely have the notion of a virtual town meeting, where folks can come and gather if they wish, but folks who are also engaged in listening in on Wi-Fi or broadcast television, for instance, have the opportunity to both participate and vote. Now, while there's some debate as to whether that's precluded by law right now, iteratively we have to test what's necessary to get there. I've decided this year, for the first time in the Commonwealth, perhaps anywhere, that I'm going to allow the experiment of remote voting, that people will have the opportunity to express their opinion in a non-official way. It will not count, but have the ability to express their opinion prior to and right through the closing of both the special town meeting and the regular town meeting. And again, while those votes will not count, one of the queries has always been, well, the opinion of the community at large is different than the opinion of those people who came to town meeting. While that may be true or not, I thought it appropriate that we actually take a look at that and discern whether that's the case. So beginning on next Monday, we'll be going live with much thanks to Chris McClure, who's our extraordinary IT director here in the community of North Andover.
He's a great addition to the town.
Truly extraordinary.
Absolutely.
And he's crafted an authenticated system where only folks who are registered voters have the ability to be able to express their opinion, and to do so, as I say, right up to the end of town meeting. But I'll express one more time that while you can do both, you can vote remotely and come to town meeting, it's really vital that one comes to town meeting, because all the power is in that room. It is our legislative body. We discuss and make the determinations after deliberation. What are the policies, bylaws, procedures that guide our community? And these people who are stewards of our community here to my right and my left can only do their job if they have the resources and the direction that town meeting provides. So I again invite you, please come to town meeting. It commences at 7 p.m. on May 14th at the North Andover High School. It's a friendly, convivial environment. Nobody gets embarrassed. Everybody has an opportunity to make their opinion known, and you have a vital responsibility and influence, because without equivocation, every vote counts. I want to thank my colleagues here, much appreciated for your participation, for everything that you do for our community, and I wish that the populace a very good spring, and I look forward to seeing you Tuesday the 14th at North Andover High School at 7 p.m. Thank you again.